Hi, this is Mark Abrams with more thoughts on critical race theory. Today I'm going to be responding to an article that I've linked below called The Five Lies of CRT, which is posted on the the Heritage Foundation's website. And there's an article there by Michael Gonzalez, senior fellow, where that he calls The Five Lies of CRT. Before I go in here, I just want to touch on the major issue, the definition of Marxism, because there's all this back and forth about is CRT Marxism or not. Marxism, as I understand it, and I've read quite a bit of it, and am sympathetic to some degree with Marxism, insofar as it speaks to the injustice of economic inequality. We live in America, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's a noble thing. And so for that reason, you know, I am not I do not consider myself a Marxist. I believe in pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. However, I don't think that we have a level playing field. I will say one more thing. Marxism has as one of its core ideas a certain understanding of human nature, which is called species being. In other words, it basically means that the essence of a human being is X. It is the human being's species being. And I'm not sure I don't think it doesn't jibe with me. The understanding of human nature at its core, what makes a human, it's what drives a human to be X, Y, or Z. That said, um, you know, I hope anyone watching this video would agree with me that, the issue of injustice matters and it needs to be taken on seriously and ASAP. So, with that, let me get into the article. The article puts forth there are 5 lies being put out by liberals about critical race theory. The first one, CRT is not in schools. Okay, so basically the issue is, you know, conservatives will say this thing is being taught in schools. In other words, for instance, in like 5th grade, they're doing this privilege walk where they'll have the kids stand up in a line and they'll say, anyone who's, white, this step forward. Anyone who's male, step forward again, and then ultimately you get all white males in front. Now, what I would say is that ultimately what schools do is they leave out the class part because it's too edgy. And this is a theme that I'll be pushing, I think is going to come through in most of my videos, which is that there are 2 strands of critical race theory, one of which will always kind of remind other people that, in the grand scheme of things, you have both class or economic issues, and then you have racial issues, racial injustice and economic injustice. And there's one strand of critical race theory, represented more so by the writings of like a Richard Delgado, as I can tell, that kind of tends to push away the economic issue. And I would argue ultimately that makes it more of a kind of a less radical kind of ideology, or less, I don't want to use the word radical. I mean, if you're not going to talk about economic inequality, you're just going to provoke division amongst people about race, when in fact you have to see the world through the lens, in part, of income inequality. And even then, as I said, I don't think that that's 100% the way to look at the issue, because of course, some people work harder and some people don't, and so forth. So, is CRT, with all that said, taught in the schools? I think this Richard Delgado version to some extent is. It leaves out class issues and it talks about race issue. Now, people will respond to me and say, well, critical race theory is a legal theory. Now, I think that yes, you can describe it that way, because Delgado, in his book, in fact, uses the term critical race theory to describe his point of view, which he says is being kind of taken on in the field of education. Number 2, critical race theory is just a way to give previously marginalized people the attention they have lacked. That's what they're saying the left is saying, and now they're going to go in and say that no, in fact, this is not true. I kind of agree. It's not really true. I mean, well, it is if you take the Delgado point of view, or the Delgado viewpoint, and just focus on race. It's not if you see it as kind of an issue of looking in the larger context of economic disadvantage. I mean, it's. I'm gonna leave it like there, right there. I know I wasn't so clear on that whole issue. Is CRT Marxist? Delgado claims he is a Marxist. However, I don't think he really, or at least the variant that is being discussed in the mainstream, and also, that's being discussed in school about how the schools are doing it. I don't think that it really is Marxist. I would from what I see from Delgado, is he's shying away from the Marxist element, and I think you need that economic inequality aspect in the conversation. So that's where I stand on that. So is it Marxist? You can decide for yourself. By the way, the Heritage Foundation links to a writer named Angela Harris in this section, and it's interesting because if you go into Angela Harris's paper that it links to, she's another CRT thinker. The paper actually says that, in fact, one can look at the writings of Marx and see it as racist, because what it says is that the whole idea of species being, which I was describing earlier, takes a look at human nature and says that there's nature. There's kind of our natural aspect to the human being, and then there's the kind of more intellectual, or it's the body mind breakup. And basically, she's saying that I hope I didn't butcher that. I think I'm on target with what she was describing there. She's saying that is then kind of filters down into, has often filtered into a way that kind of Westerners have kind of transferred their own vision of nature. In other words, the more sexual or chaotic or other attributes of nature, non-intellectual or non-rational. Westerners have kind of transferred or projected that onto non-Westerners, non-whites by and large. The fourth one here, those opposed to CRT just don't want history taught. I don't think so. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. I think they want it taught the way they see history. So the conservatives, including the Heritage Foundation, they believe in a certain history, and that's what they're doing. They when you write history, I think we can all agree you have to choose certain facts and kind of that come when you're telling a story. You can't tell every single detail. You have to create, in order to, for the sake of, it's not that you would ever fabricate a fact, but you have to kind of, to some extent, edit facts out for the ones that kind of tell the heart of the essence of the story that is history. So there's that. The use of CRT is a cynical ploy by Republicans. I do think that that's in part true. Here's how I'm going to wrap this up. Again, the word class, which is, we associate with immediately what it means to all of us when it comes to politics. It's not a classroom. It's not the first grade class or anything like that. It is economic, dividing people up by economic status, income level and so forth, wealth level and so forth. And so, if you look at this Heritage Foundation article that we're reading right here, and you were to go and do a search for the word class, you would not see it here once. I just tried it before I started this video. And what that indicates to me is that they don't want to talk about it, because they of course, the conservatives don't want to talk about class. So they're focusing on how the left wing is getting all into talking about race and dividing people up on race, when in fact that's the Delgado wing can to some degree be said to be looking that way, especially as Delgado's work is filtered into the public school system, which is even more centrist than Delgado, I think, tends to be. And so, I think you can't have an article on the internet and talk about Marxism and not have the word class in it. And so I'll leave it like that. I do think the Republicans are trying to stir up a certain degree of kind of fear about the issue of economic inequality. Thank you very much. I'll be back.